Okay, so we're doing a painting tutorial. Nobody asked for this. Last year, I got a text and a DM from Gerald Undone and Donna Did It, who both painted their studio/office spaces with matte paint, and they had some weird finish issues. So I thought, you know what, maybe, because I use matte paint, preach about matte paint all the time, why don't I make a dedicated video on how to paint your studio or your office with matte paint? I'm gonna show you guys my foolproof way to paint an entire room with matte paint from start to finish. This applies to all paints, but specifically matte because that's what I like to use. And disclaimer, I'm not a professional wall painter, but I've painted so many rooms that I feel like I've picked up a couple of tricks that I can share with you guys. Also, this feels really weird. Like I feel like I'm like, welcome to my DIY channel. But listen, you guys know I'm painting all the time and I'm doing this office again. If you want to see the full makeover, link up here. There's a nice hack, a little trick that I learned on how to get really clean lines when you're cutting in from white to dark. And we'll talk about that shortly. These are the things I use every single time. Step stool. This is a drop cloth. Trust me when I say you wanna cover your floor. Painter's tape. Oh, it smells so good. Roller cage, 2-inch angled brush. I prefer the short handle, it's easier to cut in. Get yourself an extension pole. These are friggin' deadly. Roller cover. I use the 3/8" nap to make sure that your roller cage and your roller covers are the same width. Paint tray, this one's from Backdrop Paint. You wanna make sure your cage fits inside your tray. Cause if it doesn't, it's gonna be a huge pain in the ass. I think I just broke that. Shit, I just broke that. Well, fuck. All for the video, am I right? Instead of buying the paint tray covers, I just use a cheap ass garbage bag. You line it, we'll show you how to do that later, but 2 of these for 1 paint job. 5-in-1 tool, this isn't a must have, but it's really handy when you want to scrape your roller later or scrape off the paint that you've dripped all over your floor afterwards. To open your paint can, you're gonna want a paint can opener. But if you don't have one of these and you don't wanna buy one, you can actually just use a flathead screwdriver. And you're also gonna want a damp cloth, so whether that's a paper towel or just like an old rag. Because you're guaranteed to get paint everywhere. You might want to have a little secondary cup, pour some of that paint in so when you're cutting in you can use it. If you drink a lot of like Tim Hortons iced coffees, you could just like reuse this. Also, you're gonna need a drywall sanding sponge. Let's talk about paint finish, like real quick. Paint finish is really gonna be a personal preference. I like to use matte paint and I always am choosing this. This is not sponsored, but this is my favorite matte paint. It's Regal Select Matte Finish. She's pricey, but she's a paint and primer in one, so I can usually get away with 2 coats. Some people have questions about what finish to do on what parts. I do everything in the same finish. I use that same matte paint for my walls, trim, doors, and ceiling. Having matte trim and doors is a little bit more high maintenance because it marks super easy. It is a little bit harder to wipe off. It can still be wiped with this particular paint. If you're a little bit concerned, you can go semi-gloss on the trim and doors, but it will have a sheen. Now, if you like eggshell, that's totally fine too. But if you're going for a modern look, the flatter, the better. And if you can get a wipeable paint, you will be happy. For a bathroom, you wanna make sure you're using a bathroom paint, so you wanna make sure that your paint is gonna hold up to that kind of weird, steamy environment. So before you can even start painting your room, you really need to prep it properly in order to get a really good paint job. So you wanna make sure you take out any nails or anchors out of the wall and just kind of scrape over any of those parts to get rid of any of the loose paper. And then you can use the back of a screwdriver or the back of your 5-in-1 tool to kind of just get into those holes to push everything in so all of the edges kind of have an indent. Then you can start filling that with plaster. You wanna remove all your light switch plates and your outlet plates. And then you're gonna wanna go back to those pieces that you plastered and just sand them with a sanding sponge. You're also gonna wanna tape off any awkward places to paint. And if you're new, you can tape everything, but I'm just taping the seam between the trim and the floor because I'm actually gonna need to prime that later. Okay, so before I get started, first thing I do is take a drywall sanding block, lightly sand the walls. You don't need to push hard, just kind of lightly sand it to get the goobers off. So once you get the walls lightly sanded, just take a damp microfiber cloth and just kind of wipe off any of the dust. And this sanding step is gonna give us an amazing paint finish. It's super important. So I have this wood trim that has an oil-based clear coat on it. So I'm just roughing that up with a 250 grit sandpaper and then wiping it off with a tack cloth. And then I'm just gonna do 2 coats of white primer. I'm going to be sanding in between lightly. Using this Sticks waterborne bonding primer from Benjamin Moore for the wood trim. It's an acrylic urethane primer. It cleans up with soap and water, but it does take a little bit longer to dry. So this is 1 coat of primer, and we're gonna go ahead and do the 2nd coat later on. I think it was a 24-hour waiting period. So I'm going to be painting the trim, the dark wall color, but I'm gonna be leaving this white because everything out here is gonna be white. So I'm gonna tape this off. I'm going to basically seal in the tape so we get a nice clean line. So what I'm gonna do is take my brush with this wall color, which is decorator's white, and I'm just going to cut in where the tape is and just making sure that I'm overlapping the tape and then where I'm painting. So that way it seals it with the wall color behind it, so when I put my dark on top, it's not gonna bleed underneath the parts of the tape that might not be stuck properly. So that's what I'm gonna do right now, and then we're gonna start cutting in and painting the gray when that's dry. Okay, we're moving on to the best part, which is putting on the wall color. So we're gonna shake the paint can up. Of course, I'm going to open the paint can with that paint can opener. We're gonna stir up the paint really well, pour it into a container, and we're gonna start cutting in. The trick for getting a good cut in is to load one side of your brush and wipe off the other side. And then you're gonna start a couple of inches out from the corner, and you're gonna get the paint on the wall, and then you're gonna slowly work your paint into the corner and then just bring it down ever so slightly. And you don't want to go like straight to the corner with your paint. You want to kind of start a couple of inches out and then kind of work your way in. And once you get all the way down, you're going to want to paint in one direction just to smooth out any of the thicker paint that's there. Now when it comes to the ceiling, we're doing the same thing. We're putting a little blob of paint on the wall, and we're just going to slowly angle that brush stroke up and work it into the corner, taking our time, being super slow. And if you're kind of worried about the ceiling seam, you can tape it off. For the corners, same thing. We're just kind of jamming the paint into the corners and smoothing it out, painting in one direction. That's going to minimize the amount of paint brush strokes, and then we're gonna move along to the trim. And if you see any drips or sagging paint, make sure you smooth that out while it's still wet. Once it's tacky, it's just going to kind of ruin the paint job. So just keep your eye on that. For the weird inside corners, I like to put a little bit of paint on the wall and just kind of work it up slowly into the corner, and using the tip of the brush going towards the ceiling and then towards the wall corner, just kind of moving that cut in line in. And this is the trickiest part of the cut in. And if you have to tape it, do it. Also, don't forget to paint around your outlets as well. So at this point, ow, I scraped my arm, look. Piece of shit, not you, it's a paper towel. This is the point of the tutorial where we roll the walls. We're gonna go in depth. We already lightly sanded over the walls just to kind of get rid of any of the like goobers or weird stuff, and then we've wiped them down with the microfiber cloth to get rid of the dust. So if you're painting your house, honestly, invest in good paint, good quality paint, because A, it's gonna go on better, it's gonna cover better, and it's gonna last better, and it's gonna look better.
May even be able to get away with one fewer coat.
We're just using like a random roller tray, and our roller fits inside. Okay, so here's a hack. I never buy the liners for these. So I learned this from my grandfather, who was actually a professional painter. You take a garbage bag, and you line your tray with it. Brilliant! So you just kind of put the tray inside the bag, right? Up into the corner, like that, and then just fold the bag around so that it falls within the tray, right on the ground, like this. Get it kind of situated, tuck it up. When we do our second coat, we're gonna switch bags, but I'm gonna show you a trick for that. So again, paint can opener, it's kind of redundant, you can use a screwdriver.
Remember Curtis, the guy we hired to do some of our painting in St. John's?
Yes.
He was a professional plasterer and painter, and he gave us all the tips when you're painting. He was the one who said, back roll it so you get nice even distribution. Plenty of paint. Don't like dry your roller out and stretch the paint too far. You'll have lines in your wall. And sand in between coats. He said that's the secret to get like the little goobers down. Yeah. Thank you, Curtis. We're still using all of those tips.
See how the finish is separating? So every time you open your paint can, no matter what, you want to give it a really good stir just to make sure that all of the pigments and stuff are mixed in. Make sure you get a couple of these paint sticks, they're free. So you just want to put enough paint in your tray that you're going to use.
I never put plaster back in the bucket. I never put paint back in the bucket.
Mm-hmm.
It's done.
It's done. Always put the lid back on your paint, because this stuff will start to dry and creates problems.
So did you just wipe that with the brush?
I wiped the edge with this brush.
Get the paint out of the groove?
To get the paint out of the groove, because when you hammer this on, if the paint is in the groove, it will splatter. So sometimes I'll just take a big paper towel and or a damp rag and just put it over the whole thing when I hammer this back on. We might need to use this again, so I'm not gonna put it on too tight right now. You wanna make sure that the whole roller is like wet. See how there's like white parts? You don't want that, that's gonna cause issues. You wanna make sure there's enough paint on your roller, so dunk it, roll it out, check the sides. See the white there?
I didn't work that nice roller.
Ideally your cut-in would still be wet, but mine's not, so. Oh yeah, see how much paint is on your roller? It's just like covering so good. So the technique here is we're putting enough paint on our roller to cover 2 or 3 roller widths. And we're going up and down and kind of working that paint. And then we're gonna go over slightly and we're gonna continue up and down, overlapping that paint line, making sure that when we're overlapping our lines, they're wet. And once your roller starts to dry out, we're gonna go back and do what's called a back roll. So that's when we start from the top and we, with light pressure, roll from the top to the bottom, then we move over a little bit, we go top to bottom until we reach the non-painted part, and then we're gonna reload our roller and continue and repeat that process. See that? That's just a little goober. So if you see that, just get rid of it. And then fix it, but you had to do it while it's wet, or else you're gonna shag it up. So when it comes to rolling your wall, you're gonna wanna start on one side of the wall with the arm of your roller pointing in the opposite direction, so that when you're rolling, you're kind of working towards the arm of the roller. The arm of the roller is where the most pressure is gonna be. That's where your paint is gonna be its thickest, so you wanna kind of work towards the arm so we smooth out the thicknesses of the paint. We're working our way towards this edge, right? But now we can't because it's gonna hit the wall. So I'm just gonna flip over my roller here. And when I back roll, we'll just be really careful. And then we're just gonna work our way to the corner and we're gonna make sure that we're overlapping our cut-in lines. So when it comes to those outside corners, you can just basically roll all the way. Just make sure you're not leaving a big, thick drip on the other side.
You can't use the stick in this corner because you knock the wall behind you.
So holidays are little like speckles, missing parts.
They're holidays, they took a break.
Oh, they took a break, yeah. So there's some white speckles up here, but because I already went over it a couple of times, I'm gonna leave it. We'll catch it on the second time around because I don't wanna overwork the paint.
Before the paint is fully dry, it starts looking really bad and you can see a lot of lines just where there's slight differences in thickness on the roller widths. So
don't touch it when you see it like this.
Yes, don't think, oh no, I have to go back and back roll better or I have to put more paint on. Just let it dry. All this is dry right here and it just looks completely uniform.
I'm actually gonna save my roller. So I put the roller here and then I just kind of make sure that all the plastic is touching and then just kind of roll it up tight. So when we come back, we'll remove the bag, we'll scrape the roller, and we'll put a new bag in and do the next coat.
Look at you go!
We unsheath the roller. It's like a 5-in-1. Scrape the paint off. So any of the like weird dry goobers that are probably like in the roller are no longer. And we change the bag. Put that up. Your body hurts so much. And then we repeat. I'm gonna stir this again. The only time you need to prime your walls, besides new drywall plaster, is if you have oil-based paint on your wall, or if you're painting white over dark, you might want to prime then, just to save yourself lots of coats of white. And we're gonna finish this roll. Tomorrow I'm gonna cut in, paint the trim, and then we'll be done. Okay, so there we go. The room is finished. I'm super happy with how it turned out. I went ahead and painted the doors, trim, and walls all the same Trout Gray by Benjamin Moore in the matte finish. And you don't have to do that. If you want to paint your trim white, go ahead and paint your trim white. Do whatever, have fun with it. Painting should be fun, and painting is honestly the most inexpensive way to make a massive change in any room. I know this is like a super random one for this channel because like we don't really do like DIY tutorials, but so many of you have been sending me photos of your painted studios, whether you've painted gray, matte black, or even white walls. And I love getting those photos. It gets me so excited that you guys are getting inspired from our videos to paint your spaces. So keep them coming, keep sending me your shots. Twitter is the best place for that because I will probably likely see them. Hope this helps you get a really good finish in your next paint job. And I thought it'd be fun to make this one. I honestly had a really good time. If you want to see the full makeover, I'll link it up here. But for now, I have to go and clean this place up so I can have a nice clear headspace for the next video. By next video, I mean this video that I'm about to edit. All the gear that we talked about in today's video, including a link to my top favorite paint colors, is all in the description box. You can check it out on our blog. And yeah, so thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one. Just busted a full asshole in my good paint tray when I threw it. The sacrifices we make for video. Yeah, I'm using gaff tape to fix it. Oh, I cracked the whole shit. Wait, here we go. Here we go. Gaff tape for the win, baby. It's stupid. I mean, we put a garbage bag in here anyway, right? So it's not like she's gonna leak. Ow, ow. Fix it up. There you go, it's like it never happened. Wicked.